Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar event today, Creative Solutions for Peak Performance. I think we've got a really interesting lineup. I'm going to be your MC today. My name is Roan Mackintosh. I'm the Managing Director of Incubeta Africa. So primarily our clients are based in South Africa, but we do have a couple into Africa as well. So it's pretty much sub-Saharan Africa that we look after. And I'm hoping that this will be a really interesting event for everyone. I'm just going to go through sort of a brief overview of sort of Incubeta, who we are, give you a bit of context of where we come from with this topic. We have a nice option for people on the calls for some free consultation. Who doesn't love that? So I'll give you some details on that. And I also just want to note that this is quite an interactive session. So we do have a number of polls that we encourage you to participate in. Those links will come up on the screen as and when. And then also we'll have a live panel session as well. So please, in the chat session, as we go through it, ask some questions. Those will be picked up by myself and the other moderators, and we'll kind of cover off with some of the speakers. So just to start talking about kind of Incubeta and who we are, to give you some context about why we can talk about this topic. We've gone through a journey from being a media agency in the very early stages of clicks to customers, just sort of buying performance media on Google. And we've developed into kind of a full-fledged services company. So I don't think of us as an agency anymore. We're not what we consider a siloed specialist who are very proficient in technologies and operations. But we're also not what I would term a typical agency or digital agency, which would be very generalist, right? So knowing a lot about a lot of things, but not being very specific. So we try and fill a very unique area in the ecosystem in terms of not only having a breadth of understanding across creative, technology, media, data, but also understanding how to implement that. So we'll actually get into the weeds and we'll set up GA4 for you, or we'll develop data feeds into custom audience segmentation, which links into creative. So that's kind of the positioning of Incubeta, and ultimately what we want to do is connect a lot of the opportunity within businesses to obviously maximize effectiveness, reduce wastage, and really just grow the business. So we're a growth business that focuses on growing our partners and therefore growing ourselves. So that's just a nutshell of us. We've done a bit of work in terms of researching the market and a couple of topics. And these are really our 4 key solution pillars that we're focusing on this year and next. And obviously Creative Ready is one, so I'll talk about that at the end because that's what this presentation is really about. But to give you a flavor of the other areas that we're looking at, obviously data is topical and it's key to be driving a digital business moving forward, right? And I think anyone who's been around in the industry long enough would know all about data management platforms that then turned into customer data platforms. So a DMP to a CDP. We love our 3-letter acronyms in this organization or in this industry. But really, it kind of evolved to having one central data lake where everything was centralized and all data flowed into one point. And I think what we've moved away from now is really understanding how those different data sets exist. So you'll have your CRM, you'll have your analytics, you'll have your behavioral data, you'll have your transactional data. They can sit in separate instances, but how do we connect that, right? So how do we break down those silos and how do we model it? How do we store it? How do we visualize it? How do we connect it? There's a lot of work that goes into the infrastructure work there. So we're staying abreast of a lot of what's happening in terms of the cloud processing space and bringing all of those kind of things together, which ultimately power your execution, right? Ultimately power your media strategies and ultimately power your creative strategies. The other sort of thing to note is on the analytics side of things. Everyone will know the change from Google in terms of deprecating universal analytics, moving to app and web and how tricky it can be. sort of tracking both of those components together. And really what we're focusing on is what do you need to do on a fundamental level to get the data that you need to activate on? So looking at future-ready analytics in this new privacy-focused, potentially cookie-deprecated world, what does that look like, and how can we build a roadmap for clients to get there? Another sort of hot trend that's come out is retail media. And I think the best way to describe that is look at Amazon. Amazon started out as an e-commerce player. They list products and sell them. Everyone knows that. But I don't know how many people know that their advertising revenue, I think for 2022 alone, was $2 billion. So they've created an ecosystem, or they're leveraging their e-commerce space to sell advertising, right? So it's a retailer acting as a publisher. That's quite an interesting space. And obviously, how do you involve your suppliers? How do you get people to engage in that? And that's where audiences and data come into the play as well. And then today, which is really exciting, and I've got much smarter people than me to talk about this, is just understanding how creative forms into this, right? Because everyone understands that the messaging is possibly you can get that right moment, that right person, the right audience, but if the messaging is wrong, you're still going to lose that opportunity. So how do we bring all of those together to make a really effective, powerful, resonating, a creative execution? And that's what we're going to focus on today. I did mention the kind of tidbit in the beginning of a free consultation. So it's a little bit of bribery to get you to stay till the end of this event. But we'll automatically be sharing a registration link. There's a bit of a questionnaire in terms of pre-qualification. It is limited in terms of the number of spots we have, so please fill out that information, and then we'll be in contact over email about who's qualified. But really what we'd like to do is a free consultation session to look at kind of data-driven creative readiness and possibly launching a product with you as marketers or agencies. Just on the agenda, creativity or magic. We've got Kashmira joining us from Google in Germany. Then we're going to hand over to Veronica, who's going to look at the power of data in creative, and we're going to talk about a specific case study there. And then we're going to open up to a panel discussion and just unpack that case study, which is Multichoice. And then we're going to open up to a bit of a general chat and audience Q&A. And then I'll just be doing some sort of hygiene closing things. We'll cover off on that free consultation and how that all works, etc. So that's pretty much it. We do have a little bit of a icebreaker poll, so please get your keyboards ready, etc. It should pop up on your screens right now. And the basic question is, what's the primary reason a marketing campaign stands out to you? And there are a couple of options there, so please select the ones that apply to you and submit. So what's that one that really resonates with you? I'm sure each of them have a part to play, but which is the one that really stands out to you? Most people saying personalization and relevance. Some people talking about storytelling, memorable brand messaging, and then it seems that innovation is low on the cards for today, and that's out of 60 votes. So I think that's fairly representative, and I think it's not surprising that relevance and personalization is the key. But I think that leads perfectly into the segue of Kashmira's talk, which is really around looking at the combination of data and activation, where it becomes hyper relevant and it kind of seems like magic. So I'm not going to steal the show too much. Kashmira Wagh is the business development lead from Google Germany. She's an experienced marketing professional with over 14 years in creative automation, programmatic, and search advertising. She actually started her career in advertising in the UK at Incubeta, so welcome back, and moved to Germany with Google over a decade ago to pursue her passion for learning languages. Her quest for learning continues with a recent foray into academia to pursue a master's in AI ethics and society at the University of Cambridge, and that's part-time over and above her day job. So yeah, a smart lady. And she'll delve into topics like the future of work in the age of automation and AI. So with that all said, I'm going to hand over to Cash, and yeah, looking forward to the chat.
Okay, thank you so much, Roan, for this introduction, and good morning, everyone. South Africa is very much very high on my list of places to visit. So I hope next time I get to do this in person with all of you. Although I see that there are a lot of people who've dialed in, from a lot of different places, Amsterdam and Abu Dhabi. So I guess that's the joy of doing this virtually, right? Everybody can take part. So welcome, everyone. Thank you again, Incubeta, for giving me this opportunity. And I am going to start my talk with a short video. So off we go with a short video.
India is home to more than 6 crore small businesses, and they've been fighting for survival after the coronavirus outbreak and the lockdowns.
Presenting not just a Cadbury ad. We advertised not just for ourselves, but for thousands of small businesses across India.
I love it.
The idea was innovative, but the technology and execution was challenging. Most of the stores in India don't have a digital presence. So we had to manually feed our system to create a database of local retailers, mapping them to their location, which we identified through PIN codes. As the ad was served to an individual, an algorithm located the PIN code and then mapped the various local stores in that PIN code and served the one closest to the individual in real time. The AI-enabled system created thousands of permutations for the localized version of the same ad. So many that it is even impossible to track. This resulted in the first ever hyper-personalized ad ever. One that ensured every single person that saw the ad supported a local store. Because when all of us support our local stores, all of us can have a happy Diwali. Not just a Cadbury ad.
So I really love opening with this video because first of all, like, I connected with it so much because I originally come from India, and when I saw this was back in 2021. I saw it as part of the Cannes Lions Awards. That was the year when everything was taking place virtually. So this is when I suddenly was like, wow, this is how creative you can get with data. And it's actually getting recognized, right? It's getting recognized on a global level. And if you notice, there's so many things that we can dig deep into for this creative, but I wanted to sort of highlight two things for you. I don't know if you noticed the video itself, the clips themselves are the same. So you have these 4 or 5 different variations, or they have four over here, 4 videos that they shot. And essentially the only thing that was hyper-localized was that very specific shop or in the neighborhood. And then there were millions, I think, or she gives the number in that video, but hundreds and thousands of different permutations and computations that allowed for this whole ad to come together. And of course, there's a social element to it, right? These small businesses, they were struggling, and I'm sure we've seen this globally. The pandemic was not a great time for so many businesses, and this was a very, very, very nice way for Cadbury to really give the opportunity to these businesses, and yet in a very subtle way have positioned their brand as well. So really ingenious. And again, why did I get so involved in it in the end was because I found out that all of the technology used was based off of Google Marketing Platform. So that kind of gave me this little element of, okay, this is really what if you have the right technology and the right group of people with you, you can really do something that's very impactful, not just for the society and the brand, but also on a global level. So that's what stuck with me, and it sort of, for me personally, started this journey in creative. That's when I really took on this role of being the creative lead for the team that I am in Germany. And I've had the pleasure since then of sort of organizing many events with Incubeta. And I'm, again, very, very happy to be here with you all today as part of their event. So if you've noticed, that is the theme of today's session, right? That creative is the single strongest force multiplier that you have. And the minute you improve your creative, you will see transformational gains in your campaigns. One very, very recent example I have is, and we are working on an external case study right now with this client. They saw when they adopted dynamic creatives, so dynamic data, dynamic display creatives, they saw an increased ROAS of 3.4 times as compared to last year. And that was, it really just started as a pilot. And I'm not going to paint it as a perfect picture, because it was really, really tough getting this campaign live. But once we got it live, the results were fantastic. And now the client is fully bought in, and they are going to, it's now become an always on campaign. So we have some positive case studies as well to go with it for display. And let's look at it from a meta level, right? Here are some stats that overall, based on a holistic research that has been done, creatives, if you focus on your creative, you can see an increase in ROI of 18%. Specific to the pandemic, about 81% of agencies have reported being commissioned with new creative work as a response to the pandemic. And I'm going to say this for all of us here. I know the stat is specifically for millennials and Gen Zers, but let's just accept. I mean, my parents, they don't fall into this category, but they are so connected to their devices, with their devices, and just like the stat which says that 67% of Gen Zers and millennials expect company offers to be personalized. I do see, people react to something that is relevant to them, that stands out for them. There's another statistic which I like to mention is the amount of scrolling that we do on our phones. We could be running marathons. That's how much space we cover just through scrolling. So it's no surprise then that the way we all watch has changed, the way we listen has changed, and the way we read has changed. And this sort of also reflects with the way brands are now looking into creative, because they expect the demand for creative and production to rise by 2024. And the stat for EMEA is by 44%. That's just EMEA, so, Africa is a part of that. So I'd love to actually also understand what you are seeing in your market. I hope this can be a two-way education system as well. So I'd love to hear from you as to what you're seeing in South Africa, what's landing there, and let's see where the journey goes. So I titled my talk as, is it creativity or is it magic? Because if you start off with like the manual, the old era of advertising, where you had one size fits all, one message, one broadcast message, or one message that was broadcast to all. I think we are way beyond that phase now. We also saw that there could be some meaningful interactions that could be had with brands through advertising, but very often there was not much tech involved in it. And then at the top corner, you see mechanical. So you have this very hyper personalization. And this has worked. So don't get me wrong. You have these extreme brands that have, or these brands that have done extreme remarketing. And to a certain extent, it does work. But there is sometimes this, and consumers feel that there is this storytelling, there's this emotional human connection that's missing. And that's really what the magical side conveys, is if you can blend this human intuition-based creativity and use technology to, you can really take it to the next level. And I think the example of Mondelez, or the Not Just a Cadbury ad, starts to fit into this magical category. But you know how this is something that we humans love to do? We can always do better. And that's what they did last year. So last year they released an ad, and I'm not going to play this, but you will receive these slides. So they released an ad called Shah Rukh Khan My Ad. And for those who don't know Shah Rukh Khan, he's a very, very popular Bollywood star. And if you see the values that they used were very similar. They still wanted to support the local stores. And they wanted, the local stores would never have the money to have Shah Rukh Khan, or a famous Bollywood star as their spokesperson, or as their brand ambassador. So Cadbury enabled this for them, and using actually AI-powered voice technology, they I suppose he must have spent like a few minutes in the studio recording one version of the ad. And then using AI-powered technology, they were able to release multiple versions of him saying the name of that specific local store. That was part of the campaign. So again, the concept is the same, hyper-personalized, but then adding this bit of magic and also having a very positive societal impact. This also won awards at Cannes last year. And that was, I always find this amazing that, we never stop. That's one thing about us, is we never stop at just one award. We always want to improve and go for the next one. And this was a great example. So this is where I want to end my talk with one of my favorite science fiction authors, Arthur C. Clarke. He says that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And these are the experiences I feel like as marketers, we do have the capacity to create these magical experiences for our consumers because we have a breadth of technology at our disposal.
Thanks so much, Kash. Before Veronica comes on, I'm with you for a few seconds. We do have another poll that I think we're going to kick off now. And the question really is just, how frequently do you update your creative content based on data insights? So when that comes up, if you could just answer. But I think something that stood out for me, and I love that quote, indistinguishable from magic. I think in a previous life, one of our directors, it was a South African started company and it had done quite well. They were moving over to London, getting based there in the scale up. And basically he browsed some property websites because they were looking at relocating the family. But then of course he needed his fix of local news. So he came back onto Media 24, and at the top of the Media 24 website was an ad for the site that he had just been on, so the property site, with a sort of scrolling rotational GIF view of some of the properties he'd sold. Now, the reason that was exciting to me is because I'd been in that kind of publishing space. I knew how kind of difficult it is sometimes to book ads and the process with IOs and how tedious that can be to actually get something that's quite relevant. But the impact of that was seemingly quite magical. Someone who hasn't worked in the industry doesn't know how impressive that is, but it was all delivered through the Google Ad Exchange. And it was quite mechanical. So what resonated for me when you showed that kind of quadrant, it was very, take this, it's that, it's very simple data points, where I think where we are now, and that was probably 5 years ago, I think. So where we are now in terms of that creative automation possibility, I think leads brilliantly into what Veronica is going to talk about, and the kind of success case study that we had with Multichoice, where it's, again, seamless and magical, but not as mechanical, and slightly more resonance around that. So yeah, just a personal anecdote there. So if I look at the poll results here quickly, how often do you update your stuff? Monthly is at highest, 45%, quarterly at 29%, weekly at 17%, which is interesting that some people are doing it on that kind of level. And then really never biannually 7% and 4%. So it seems like people on the call are quite engaged with this and are doing those creative refreshes quite often, which is really encouraging to hear. But I guess what we want to try and do is get it to that live, automated, real-time thing. And I'm sure the people who are doing it monthly are kind of going, and it takes a lot of work, right? So how can we use automation and AI and those sort of things to make these things better? So I'm going to hand over now to Veronica. Veronica is our creative commercial director from EMEA. She sits in the Netherlands, but as you can hear from her accent, she's still very much rooted in South Africa. She's recognized for her very diverse industry experience. And when I asked her in the prep for this, if we had to have a title to address her career, what would it be? And she kind of thought a little bit and then quite boldly said, unleashing boundless potential. And really what that means is kind of embracing change and creating a harmonious business structure in what is quite a complex area and space, right? So it's quite a bold ambition, but her skill set's really a fusion of creative ideation, strategic prowess, some really strong technical expertise as well. So she's very proficient in Google Marketing Platform, well-versed in cloud and network infrastructure, and really data or powered by data-driven diligence. So she really understands the processes that need to be put in place to activate creatively and get that ideation across in quite a technical space. So it's a very holistic viewpoint that Veronica brings to the table. And on that note, I'm going to hand over, and thanks, Veronica.
Thank you, Roan. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here. I really honestly wish I was in a room with you all. I would have loved to seen a few faces and definitely hear a couple of yours. And Cash, it's also really good to see you on the call with us today. I always love working with you on our presentations. All right, jumping straight in. I kind of want to follow on what Cash was saying in terms of the importance of personalization. In reality, that scrolling marathon she was referring to, we have on average 8 seconds to catch our audience attention. And with Gen Z, that is seemingly decreasing to 1.3 seconds. I myself, when I spend time online, I'm very specific, very particular about what I want and what I'm looking for. So I show little brand loyalty sometimes, and I'm very focused on looking for specific things. And it kind of got me thinking, and it put me across this TED Talk of Patrick Renoir that I came across. And it talks about, is there a buying button in the consumer brain? And what's quite surprising about this is that what shocked me the most is that big brands like Coca-Cola and Pepsi are actually starting to utilize neuroscience into their actual marketing structures. And I guess in terms of modern day marketing, when I tried to kind of contextualize that, it came back to really understanding yourself as a human being. Our brains are like supercomputers. It processes everything through a series of sequences and events. And that's really where all of our decision making comes from. And from a virtual perspective and kind of everything online, we are having a full online immersive experience. And what we offer to our audiences kind of has to resonate in the same thing. You do need to be able to, especially with privacy components coming in, be able to kind of relate back some element of a pattern. And if we had to look at these modern day problems, we have to find modern day solutions. And for us here at Incubeta, when we kind of try and translate that complexity, we believe that creativity requires, of course, as always, that beautiful style, but also substance. And for us, data-driven creative is the substance that comes into creativity. I'm going to talk a lot today, and I'm incredibly excited about this topic, and it's going to address personalization and performance, but there are 3 key things that you can take out of it if there's anything I want you to remember. And the first part is really that data informs creativity, and I will unpack that a little bit more. Secondly, I'm going to touch a little bit on data ethics and compliance. This is such a big element. It ties into automation, it ties into a scale, it ties into data privacy, it ties into really how we engage with audiences and what level of information that we can access. And very importantly is how we measure and iterate. This is a very key element for me as well. We're kind of, as organizations, should be moving away from static thinking into dynamic thinking. But when we are doing dynamic thinking and creating data cultures, we should also be understanding how to measure and iterate that moving forward. There's really no point in having access to all this data and not creating some sort of topology to access it. I want to also move us into a bit of a poll, and when I do, I know we all have our cell phones close by. If you can scan that barcode for me, I really just want to learn a little bit more about our audience. In my career, I moved to the Netherlands from Cape Town 2.5 years ago, and I kind of reinvented myself. I've done this a few times. I've worked across 4 global industries. As Roan explained, my area of expertise is around being a marketer. I've been on the forefront of kind of cloud conversations, specifically in South Africa, moving from on-prem into a cloud environment. I've also been in social intelligence. I understand data scraping and software services. But the last almost 3 years now, I've spent in this agency landscape in a niche area focused on dynamic creative, leading our teams in the European market. And what I'm really curious to learn is what you as marketers believe creativity looks like. And it's going to come up in a little bit of a word slide. I hope this will work. Otherwise, our team will pop up the word cloud. Because what I'm kind of curious to see is one thing I've learned, having spent some time in the agency landscape, is that there's very distinctive focus areas. There's tech, there's media, then there is an element of creative, and then of course there's an element of data. And having been working across a data-driven component, I've learned that the most exciting part about what we do is truly break some of these silos. Okay, surprising is the first word. That's quite a fun one. I do like that. Imagination, also really cool. I love that. Appealing, yep. Okay, cool. Yes, personalization. Humor, nice, yes. Okay, yeah, creativity definitely has that wow factor to it. I love that. That's probably one of the exciting parts. Tailored messaging, animation, relevance, also, yeah, animation, awareness, really cool. Immediately, just so many perspectives coming into one word if you described creativity and marketing. So, so exciting. Bark smarter, engaging, inspiring, one of my favorite words in the world, absolutely. Powerful, yep, love that. Nice. This is going to keep generating. I'll share it back to you guys. Of course, appealing wins. I'm going to kind of keep conscious of time. I'm going to share with you what my example or kind of how I see creativity and marketing. And it's kind of funny that we say innovation right now, having taken the first poll, didn't really find innovation so important in digital marketing, but it's fine. That's why I'm here today, and I love what I do. I'm going to take the opportunity to share with you on how I believe innovation needs to be at the forefront of creativity in digital marketing. And I think one of my favorite parts here is I moved to the Netherlands, coming in as a digital producer, kind of really starting in the entry ranks of digital project management, and I knew nothing. I literally was the dumbest person in the room. And one of the exciting parts for me was that over that 1.5 year period that I was doing actual digital production work, I learned a lot about the process and the technical detail on design, and then how that looks in a data structure, and then in integration into these ad serving environments, and understanding our audiences. And a year into that, the business gave me an opportunity to lead these teams. And because dynamic creative, or DCO as we know it, is about 7 years old in our industry, it was very niche in the market. A lot of advertisers and marketers weren't really focusing on it due to the complexity and the bit of the heavy lifting that takes place. And they kind of asked me, is there, you can lead the team of designers and developers in the European market. We just need to kind of keep your focus quite strategic on this element of the business. And I made up my own job title. It was the best, most funnest time of my career. I came up with a title called Head of Integrated Creative. And I love that for myself because it spoke about innovation, and it spoke about creativity, and it spoke about everything that we're busy with in terms of the age of information. And what I loved about that specifically is that it was enforcing businesses to think more in a collaborative fashion, and innovation is demanding collaboration between tech, media, data, people. It needs to be cohesive. It needs to be seamless. And talking about innovation, here with us on the poll today is Bea, and if you are in the chat, drop her a little happy belated birthday for yesterday. We had a really, really exciting project with Multichoice, and they're a truly innovative brand, having stepped into this data-driven creative space. And what I would like to do today is take the opportunity to run you through the project. And of course, I cut this way. If you want to talk about performance, I'm just going to give it to you straight. The data doesn't lie. I love dynamic creative for its transparency. We're able to build so many counters and metrics behind this creative framework. We're able to track behavior, interest, and an impression, and you can actually change this all in real time to drive those conversions and clicks that you're looking for. In addition to that, what I really truly enjoy is that with data-driven creative, the objective and execution is always clear. We understand the media brief, we understand the targeting, we understand the audiences, the goals that you're trying to achieve. Sitting down with Multichoice, it was very evident that they were looking to drive new subscribers. Also, for an organization like themselves and the dawn of so many other broadcasting services, their landscape became tremendously competitive. And how we could support with that is an approach where we offered engagement. And it was partnered in during the FIFA World Cup period, and it was really around a solution that focused on hyper-localization. And what we did is we have one single creative framework. It's not about rebriefing your creative every single time to match your audience. It's really about looking at your campaign process and kind of changing it into an initial granular build, and then it moves into scale. You can knock down up to 70% of time spent on this campaign briefing process once your framework is in place. And in this hyper-localization strategy, we're also looking at efficiency and cost by working with this one creative wireframe. So we want to understand all the countries that we're targeting. In this particular case, we were also using DSTV and GoTV, which uniquely has two CSS styling, which is really the code for the different brand elements that we need to bring into the creative framework. And how we do that and ensure that the content, of course, remains relevant every time is we attribute additional data components to it. First and foremost, we start by bringing in an element of geolocation into the creative. And when I say utilize data, don't be creepy. Really utilize data in a way where it's not accessing first party. Geolocation allows us to identify how we want languages to change in terms of the multi-language combination for Multichoice. And in addition to that, we also want to ensure that we're still engaging with soccer fans. So we bring in live match fixtures. And outside of that, we can also bring in a pure creative element where with this campaign, it actually had unique patterns per African country. I found that to be truly beautiful, which meant that you weren't only having some of these sports fixtures on it, but there was a real high impact creative component that came into this design as well. And very simply, how the data flows into the creativity, as I've mentioned before, is we really look into meeting with agencies, and this is where we partner well. As a creative partner, really specializing in these creative elements, we understand where your media brief sits, we understand your brand, and we understand your targeting, and we delve that into what is our main feed structure. That then flows into an additional element of creativity, which is what we refer to as our match feed. Here we can bring in different flags, different patterns, time of day in a live fixture into the creative to do the changes that we're looking for, and also drive that conversion and interest for the subscription. And we localize that. And of course, this is a very important element of scale. We need to ensure that the brand is safeguarded. We understand the guidelines very carefully. We bring in styling guides that already, from a code perspective, understand how the brand is and isn't allowed to change. Outside of that, there's a real element of optimization that, of course, happens inside of the JavaScript. And we're working with HTML5 assets. Here we can also determine, what level of optimization you're looking for in terms of rotations and interests and granular targeting. And effectively, at the end of the day, your output is a creative in a single framework. You're only spending time on building one creative that knows how to scale across multiple countries, multiple languages, and has those unique attributions to it. I realize now that we are out of time in terms of the 15-minute slot. There are a couple of things that I have added onto the deck that I'm pretty sure is going to be shared with you, but I think the most important thing I would want to land in, and I'm going to do this very quickly, is creative drives performance in a few ways, as I've just shared with you. But the biggest performance flex for dynamic creative is still coming. Dynamic creative is going to prepare you for the world of AI, and that is where the landscape is going to become truly remarkably competitive. What you want to start doing is making sure that you have an element of focus on your data integration, cleaning, normalization, and enrichment processes taking place. And this really happens in a framework of data-driven creative. In addition to that, you need to be realistic. These are 15 challenges that I've kind of dotted down that marketers are already facing today. And this, without a doubt, is addressed within the context of dynamic creative, which we kind of prefer to refer to as whole brain creative. It's not a slogan I can coin myself, but it's one that I particularly enjoy. And it's because it's fully encompassing, where it considers creative to do a little bit more of the heavy lifting so that the media investment can go further. And on that note, and I kind of expected myself to go a little over, I'm going to hand back over for the next speaker to come in.
Thanks so much, Veronica. I think you can actually hang around because we're going to move into the kind of panel discussion. So Cash, if you can join back in as well. But the new person that will be joining us now, just in way of intro, is Bea Strauss from Multichoice. She's the head of digital marketing there. So Bea is a seasoned digital marketer professional, over a decade of experience in the field. Her career has really been marked by the ability to foster trust and collaboration across operational teams, both in EMEA and in the APAC regions as well. Also cultivating relationships with colleagues from diverse functional areas. And I think that's just really important in terms of getting these kind of executions right, is a lot of the work is in breaking down the silos internally. So I think that's part of the success that we've had out of these activations. Bea is also very well known for her problem-solving skills, and I think that came to fore in this activation. There were a lot of kind of curveballs in a very tight time frame, and she really helped us successfully navigate those complex situations by really driving and leading those teams. So Bea's professional philosophy centers on delivering excellence in every endeavor, and she really relishes challenges as opportunities for growth. And I think it's a testament to the fact that she's taken on these kind of things and been one of the forerunners in this space that we're going to be having this conversation right now. So Bea, thank you so much for joining the panel. Again, guys, just a reminder, please add your questions to the chat. Also, just a note for Mel in the background, I've decided to skip the poll because we are a little bit behind on time. So if you want to run the poll in the background, the guys can answer, but I won't be touching on it. So Bea, welcome to the panel. I think I'll start off with you. Having And obviously it's your opportunity to disagree with Veronica. She's put her view forward, but I think it was a successful DDC strategy. So having launched that, what are some of the key learnings that you guys took away for yourself and your teams?
Yeah, I think first of all, thanks for the lovely intro, Rowan. I appreciate it. It's also good to be back home. I originated from DKNA, so back to my roots. So in terms of like learnings, I think the big one for me is, and I agree with Veronica, it was a massive success. Back to basics. I think that was a big one for me, is just go back to basics. Do what you do well and don't try to conquer the world with one creative. It's not going to happen. Planning, and plan. That's super important. I think with this execution, yes, we were tight for time. That's normally how it goes with any client-partner relationship, right? There's always going to be time pressure. But at the same time, the better you plan and the better you manage expectations of everyone involved, the better success you'll have. So that was a big one for me. I think the other one for me is just have fun. Like, this is marketing, guys. If you're not having fun, you're doing something wrong. And the other thing is, it's just, we tend to make things so complicated, but it's just impressions and clicks at the end of the day. And we are sorry, we have another visitor. At the end of the day, it's just having fun, and it's impressions and clicks, and we're not doing open heart surgery. We're having fun. So if you're in this process and you're not enjoying it, you're doing it wrong. So that's definitely a learning for me.
I love that. It's a great mantra to have when you get in those sort of high pressure situations and everyone is panicking that, you know, the World Cup is coming and we're not live yet. We don't have the assets, and what about this and what about that? And we haven't QA'd.
Yeah.
It can get stressful, but I like that. Just have fun through the process.
And indeed, the World Cup specifically is so complicated because the fixtures aren't clear. That was the other thing. It's like you're working with the situation where the next fixture, you don't even know what the fixture is going to be. So yeah, that was also fun.
That's such a lovely point, because I think it talks to the agility of the solution, right? I know we redid those feeds and we redesigned them and we kind of worked things as the tournament progressed, right? Because as you say, you don't know what the outcome is. So it's not like you can pre-plan this. You kind of have to see what the live result is on the weekend and then respond to it. And I think that was the beauty of the solution as well, is that it allowed us that agility to update on the fly as we went. So very valid point. You mentioned kind of impressions and clicks. So I know Veronica touched on some of the kind of key metrics that we have from that. But obviously, I'm keen to understand from a business perspective, like, how do you measure the success of a DDC creative strategy?
Yeah, look, I think for us, definitely engagement with your creative, some level of engagement. And then in our world, it would be a CTR and a CPA of sort, right? So in our world, it's also very interesting in terms of just working in Africa, with digital penetration not being what it is in, say, Europe or America or whatever it might be. So we couldn't necessarily track a new subscriber. So we were able to track an existing customer paying again to stay connected and keep watching. So that was our conversion point. But still, just measuring that engagement was a big one. So just to carry on this idea, so this was one part of the execution. Then we had an additional part of the execution that the Google team helped us with, was a programmatic digital out of home with dynamic creative in Kenya. Right. So by the end of the tournament, with the final and the semi-final, we literally had people that can't afford TV, was not connected, couldn't even go to a bar at the time and watch the game, standing underneath the billboard to see the final score. And that was an incredible moment for us. And just speaking to your consumer and speaking to your market, and giving someone that wouldn't have otherwise have had access to that information immediately to give them that. So it's almost chilling, but it was a really beautiful moment.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's amazing how you have these kind of unintended impacts in a way, and that sounds like a perfect example. And actually, I must thank Cash for one of the questions that were put in was around SOE, and I had no idea what SOE is, but it's share of brand experience, right? And that's a new kind of metric. So instead of share of voice, and I think that's a perfect example of that brand engagement and the experience and kind of measuring that. So that's fantastic. Thank you. Veronica, I want to pivot to you a little bit because we talked about timelines, and I know this specific project was kind of typical in being last minute or 11th hour, but we managed to turn it around quite quickly. Just in terms of what should people be expecting in terms of how long does it take to do or to make a DDC creative strategy work effectively?
Yeah. Do you want my sales answer, or do you want my production hat on? I'm joking.
No, look, I think there's a reality to pressures that come in, but then there's an ideal world, and I think if you can give a view of both, that'll help.
So look, I think that's actually why I kind of do this very tongue-in-cheek. I'd love to say that automation is magic. It really does take a little bit of groundwork. That's the reality of technology. I would say a project like this, you can execute on within a period of 4 to 6 weeks comfortably. But when you want to do it in 4 to 6 weeks, and at this scale, you need to ensure that if you're taking on an element of design, that you have you have the design understanding. Very importantly. And when we're moving into data strategy, at this point in time of the development, we actually want to come into understanding your media brief quite well and your targeting. And by that point, you need to actually know how do you want to communicate to your audience. And we find that usually that's where our big loops sit. And also, of course, your brand teams need to be on board because they need to approve the flexibility of this creative. And if your approval workflows are there and you have quite a bit of a seamless communication flow between the brand, the media teams inside of your own business, then 4 to 6 weeks, without a doubt, quite comfortably.
Okay, that sounds like a good mix between what's reasonable and what people want to hear in terms of it's quick to activate. It can be, but you probably want to do a bit more planning. And you mentioned quite a bit around the groundwork that's there. And I know specifically having worked on this solution, there are feeds. There's a lot in the background. So how do you optimize a creative strategy versus a feed strategy?
So I think that's actually a very important question. When I speak to organizations, there's one element of scale that you also need to think of, and that comes into design already. Optimization allows us to build in a rule set where we're already connecting into either data within your organization, and that could be product data. If you're a big e-commerce, you could be plugging into Google Manufacturing Center. That's live integration, and our creative will already understand the parameters of your creative fields or image fields are available in your product feed, allowing us to start looking at how to optimize best use of product interest. How does the creative framework look? But when you're looking at just doing a basic feed structure and you're actually only approaching a data-driven creative for a specific campaign, that means your designs are tailored only for that unique campaign, and you're only thinking about updating specific items into a field for that specific campaign. It is still data-driven, you're still scaling, but you're not really looking at how that can be optimized in terms of rule sets and integration of data into your business, if that kind of lands it well.
Okay, that makes sense. And I'm going to stick with you, Cash. I'm coming to you next, but there was a question that was asked that's quite topical here. It's from Alan. Hey, Alan, how's it going? He basically says, we run feed-based ads for our vehicle stock through Google Ads, not Merchant Center like typical e-commerce users, but there aren't any options to change the way these ads are displayed. So is there a different ad serving platform that gives more control over the ad and what attributes are displayed?
So for Google Ads, we have found a way to do it. We have a content injection capability. We own a proprietary tool called Seamless Creative that allows us to use key values and signals, and that creates a element of dynamic components within the Google Ad structure. It's a similar approach to dynamic content. It's of course not as fully functional as an HTML5 asset, but with targeting values and key values, we can change elements in a dynamic content. Alan, if you want, we can look at sharing some detail with you and run a more detailed session.
And I see Cash did give some input there. Just there was a follow-up question around DCO or DDC campaigns with only a Google Ads account. And obviously there are new features like PMAX, which we're doing a couple of kind of test scenarios with. So that could be a way to inject some dynamic stuff into your marketing, but we can bring in some stuff there offline. But hopefully that answers the question. Cash, I want to come back to you just in terms of, it sounds like there's quite a bit of complexity around this, right? Multiple channels, multiple audience segments. So how have you seen clients navigating this in terms of bringing things together across the various teams? And are there any innovation solutions that you want to highlight in terms of bringing a consistent and effective message to the fore?
So to answer your last question, what came to my mind when you said, what is an innovative solution? And I'm going to say it's a spreadsheet. Really, the spreadsheet is the king of this all. So, okay, but, jokes aside, yes, spreadsheet is, or, your feeds are going to come in there. It is an important part of this. I would also say, I mean, you hit the nail on this, Bea, perfectly. Have fun while doing it. And you will be surprised at how complex this can get. And in my talk, I briefly mentioned this campaign, this pilot campaign that we tested out, which was a huge success, but it was so incredibly complex. We had so many people involved in it, and what we noticed very quickly was how much of a talent gap there is in the market. We had basically one person who was the spreadsheet master, and when he went on holiday, everything broke, right? And that's tough. Like, that should not actually happen. So another thing I can mention is, like, the more sort of these events that you attend, the more companies who are, partners like Incubeta who have experience in doing this, the better your success will be. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yes, it is going to be complex, right? Spreadsheet is the king. Have fun, because that's what is going to get you through this complexity, and then having the right people. And if you don't have the right people, making sure you train, you yourself get trained, or you are in contact with people who are experienced in this.
And as a shameless plug, you have the right partners, absolutely. So Cash, I think that's a great insight in terms of complexity and bringing innovation to it. And this is, I guess, is a question for you, but Veronica and Bea, please jump in as well, because I think it's quite an open question. In this evolving landscape, what are some of the ways that you stay up to date on the latest kind of thing? I know you mentioned in your previous comment, events like this are a way to stay updated, but is there something else? Do you have a feed that you've subscribed to? Is there a specific podcast or something that you listen to? Any kind of tips or tricks in terms of how people can stay updated in terms of latest happenings in this, what is a burgeoning area of discussion?
Yeah, I can just continue and then hand over to Veronica and Bea, because I'd love to hear your tips as well. What I have done is I've signed up to a lot of newsletters, and I know this, it might clog up your emails, your email inbox, but hang on to it, because you really get an idea on what various partners or agencies or even brands are doing. So newsletters are my first thing. I sort of schedule like an hour a month in my calendar to just go through them. So it doesn't have to be, you don't have to get distracted by them as they come in. And then the second I would say is also, try and see look at the award-winning case studies that are getting recognized by institutions like Cannes, or there's so, I'm sure there's a local African-based awarding body that you could also refer to, and just check out what their top awards have been. those are my 2 tips. Okay.
Thank you. Veronica, Bea, anything to add from your side?
While Bea finds the unmute button, I know she wants to say something. I will say, yeah, LinkedIn. To be honest with you, a lot of it's also engaging with clients. A lot of it is kind of on the job learning, addressing complexity. We're figuring things out as we go, and then kind of spending time amongst colleagues and asking people that I know in the industry around how they troubleshoot it and solve for it. I think that's kind of also going to have to be the nature of how we move forward. There isn't an answer for everything immediately.
Yeah, so I think from my side, Veronica, as well, I definitely, Instagram and LinkedIn is where my feed is sort of set up in a way that I follow stuff like Adweek, Cannes Lions, brands that I'm inspired by, whether it be like a silly one. I think it was more of like not a digital execution, but an out-of-home execution. Maybelline at a tube in London, and as a train goes by, it puts on like a mascara lash or whatever, like that sort of thing. Like, it's just fun. So brands you find inspiring. Adweek is great for me. Cannes Lions is great for me. Like, there's a couple of ones, and you know how these algorithms work, is the whatever you follow, it gives you more of. So yeah, so Instagram, LinkedIn.
Trust the algorithms. That's a dangerous place, but I hear what you're saying. Bea, I'm going to stay with you. Just in terms of how important is this data-driven brand strategy to the MultiChoice business?
Look, definitely a key, and it's relatively new in our world as well, if I can put it that way. And what's interesting, like Veronica also mentioned, like bigger brands going into specific learnings, we're actually sending our teams on behavioral science courses, our marketing teams. So I think we're in our 3rd cohort or something, I can't remember. But just the teams are finding it super valuable. And like, a modern person thinks differently than what a person thought 10 years ago. I mean, even today, I'm 36. Goodness. But anyway, a person of 22 might be your target audience, depending on which brand you are and what your product is, thinks differently than you do. It's just life. So I think that's incredibly valuable. It's just keeping up to date with what's happening and how people are thinking differently. So yes, it's part of our strategy. We're also on the journey with Google in terms of our digital maturity and the whole Boston Consulting Group story, and it's part of that. So it's definitely a key pillar. Yeah.
Key pillar. Okay, that's amazing. And I think you touched on something there as well, is around the exposure and kind of education, and that's so important because there's a kind of a fear of the unknown, and I think that's a human nature across anything, right? And how do you make something tangible and operational? You just expose it, right? Put some light on it, get people exposure to machine learning or spreadsheets and algorithms and data, and it actually is quite exciting. And Cash, I'm also a bit of a spreadsheet geek. I actually enjoy working with the numbers, and I think that's part of what it takes to operate in this digital world is having that data at the base. I'm just conscious of time. I've got a couple of questions and I'm not sure which ones to go with. So I'm going to go with the audience ones first, and then maybe if we have time, I'll come back to the last ones. There's one from Kugan Pillay, who says, I think after a campaign of this magnitude, we must ask ourselves, what are our learnings? What are some of the actions we can take? So Bea or Veronica, looking at the MultiChoice one specifically, what was some of the things, out of the learnings, what are you keeping? What are you going to do different next time? Or what are you going to do a lot more of in the future?
Yeah, so I'll go first. Plan. So that's and just in terms of the MultiChoice world, I mean, everyone in South Africa knows MultiChoice is a brand, but we've got so much content. It's sports, it's local content, it's international content, it's everything. So planning for that content and deciding, so this is the other thing, not every single ad needs to be a dynamic creative execution, right? So that's also fine. Not every single ad needs to be that. But which pillars in your year do you want to plan for to have this type of execution?
Yeah,
Perfect.
that's a very, very good answer, Bea, and I think a great learning from the project. I think the biggest one for me, what I would like to see from MultiChoice, especially addressing all that content, would be integrations. Having an automated solution that already recognizes the different category of shows and services that you have, and having that pre-populated and kind of letting you take off your hands and the content is generated for you. I'd love to see that for you and your team.
I think that's a great segue as well, because Jared asked quite a practical question of, like, after you've acquired your data, you require responsive advertising. How do you use automation to enable your production to keep up? Because I think that is a big challenge of, yes, we've got the data, we've got the audience, but how do I get enough content to match that?
No, Veronica, I'll hand over to you, but I think it's keeping teams tight, right? So this is also just in terms of how a world works. You've got a marketing department, you've got a content department, you've got a sales department, you've got and it's breaking down the silos, right? So that you have everyone talking the same language and bringing everyone into that planning phase. Because the reality is, yes, we want to do all the different content pillars, local content and sport and everything, but if we're not getting the images and the open files for the local content piece in time, then it's impossible. So it's aligning the teams, your internal stakeholders, everyone to point their noses in the same direction.
And to follow on that, I think an additional one is don't veer away from user-generated content. I think that there's a real beautiful connection back to audiences, and there are ways to plug in and create connections between these social streams. And you can feed that into a content framework and build some element of approval workflow, and you can drive the overarching campaign messaging. But I think user-generated content definitely needs to be top of mind as well as a high-impact element.
Amazing. Thank you all so much for your very insightful inputs. We've run out a bit of time, so I need to do some closing remarks. But Cash, I'm conscious that we haven't heard from you for a while, so I'm going to give you one last opportunity. Anything you want to add on the topic, or any final closing comments from your side?
Yeah, so first of all, really, really nice to be here. I have to say, like, when a lot of brands, when they embark on this journey, they want to do it all. Right? Like, suddenly it's like, wow, okay, I want to be so hyper personal and get all the data that I have, etc. And I would say start small, right? Start small, start simple, have like a clean idea, and then you can bring in different elements of, test out what's working, and then iterate, and then start making it more complex. But yeah, so start small, start simple, and have the right people on board, and you will be perfect.
We will create magic. Amazing. Thank you so much, Cash. I really appreciate everyone's time. Just in terms of the closeout, if you could please stay on, there'll be an automatic redirection to a form to fill in for a free consultation, as I mentioned in the beginning, with our experts. Obviously, it is limited seats available, so please fill in the questionnaire, and then we'll notify you via email to confirm your qualification for that, and we'll set up the session accordingly. The goal for that really is to assess your business readiness for a DDC project like we've been discussing today, and we'll have valuable advice in terms of how to prepare for that. We've talked a lot about the planning, so it's getting the foundations right, making sure that we start on the right foot, and what to expect through the process. That's what that session will be. Thanks so much, everyone, for your time. I think we're about 2 minutes from the close, so we've done really well for time. There were lots more questions that I wanted to ask, but we just didn't get there. But thank you very much for the robust engagement. Thank you for the questions on the chat, and we look forward to seeing you next time.